So let's pick up where we left off in the last video. In the last video we created the left and right movement for our character, and we also got our character to pretty much change his image and face the right direction when we moved our character left or right with the arrow keys. What we want to do is add in a jump now, and that's really just as easy as the move to the right and to the move to the left. So what I'm going to do here is again some spring cleaning. In this big rule that we've been creating here, I'm just going to rename this. Instead of rule, I'm going to call this move left, move right, and we're going to work on the jump right now. So we know this entire rule, if we fold it up, is all the programming for move left, move right, and of course jump. And this change attribute that we had here, in case we forget what this whole section here is for, this is to stop movement. So we can close that down as well. So we can close down the move right and we can close down the move left just so we're not overwhelmed with the amount of code. Again, this is why it's so important to clean things up. You can kind of get overwhelmed and have trouble finding where certain behaviors are if you don't name everything and then clean it up like I've done here. So to do the jump, all we need to do is select one of these move right or move left. Hold the Alt and Option key to go ahead and duplicate that entire rule. Again, you're going to make sure it's stuck in the otherwise section. So we can rename this new one jump. And I'm just going to put this underneath move left. It doesn't matter where it is in the order. I just like to keep things move right, move left, and of course jump. So this is just a duplicate, so we need to of course change some of the attributes here. So for the jump, I'm going to delete the change image. We don't need to change any image for the jump at all. And for the key input, we need to switch this over to spacebar. And for the attribute that we want to change, we want to, again, click here, go to our Heroes, Motion, Linear Velocity, but this time instead of X, which is left and right or horizontal, we're going to go ahead and check or select Y by double clicking on it. Again, Y would be our vertical movement or up and down. So I'll just double click on that. So we've changed this now, and we can see that by hovering over it that it's been changed to linear velocity and Y. And instead of 200, let's just do something a little bit stronger, something like 300. And again, let's just read our programming out loud so we know what we're doing. When we press the space bar, we are going to change the linear velocity in Y to 300. So let's see what happens when we push the space bar. You can see I get a nice high jump for my character. Now that is a little bit too high, so I'm just going to back up. And instead of 300, let's go back to 200, and then we'll preview that. And then space bar. And I think the perfect amount for my scene would be 250. So you can kind of just play with these different values and test out what works best for you. Spacebar, and that's a nice high jump, but not too high. So perfect. Really easy to do. Move left, move right, and of course spacebar. And now we can get our character to jump across our gaps if we wanted to. Now the only problem that we have here so far is if I push spacebar once and then again, and then of course again we get this double jump, which is really interesting. Maybe you're working on a game where you have a character that can kind of flap or fly a little bit, or has a jetpack and has these jumps, and you want to keep this attribute the way it is, but we don't. We only want our character to be able to jump once. So how do we constrain our actor to only jump once? Well, an easiest way of doing it is making sure that we only allow our character to jump when he's actually touching the ground, which makes a lot of sense. So let's go ahead and set that up. I'm going to back up, and I'm going to go back to this jump behavior, where we said when you push the space bar, go ahead and change the Y linear velocity to 250. But we want to set up a condition. And again, we do that by clicking on this little plus icon right here. So I'll click the plus icon, and the new condition that I want to be true is you have to overlap and collide with the ground in order for this to happen. So the space bar has to happen, and you have to be touching the ground. Otherwise, if these two conditions aren't true, then you're not allowed to jump. So let's go ahead and test that out. So I'll hit the space bar, and then hit the space bar again, and of course we don't get a jump. So space bar, and of course our character is not jumping. So let's back up and let's see if we can now get our character to explore our scene, because we have the move right, move left, and jump. And the only other thing that I need to add in here to get my character to explore is of course the control camera behavior. So in my behaviors here, we'll just drag and drop control camera. You don't need this sitting inside any kind of rule, so just leave it sitting inside the main space of your character. And we're going to back up. And what we want to do is adjust the tolerance of the camera. So right now, if I were to preview this, you can see that my character can move all the way to the edge of the screen before he starts pushing the camera across. And of course, we want the camera to be a little bit more glued to our character than that. So we will click this icon right here. And when I do, you can see that we can grab these handles here and we can adjust the tolerance as to how far our character can go before he starts pushing the camera across. And then once I've adjusted that, I can click the cursor icon, and then I'll set everything back to normal. And then if I hit preview, you can see now my character only has to move a little bit before he actually starts pushing the camera. And then of course we can start exploring the level. Now you'll notice that when I come to this hill here, you may or may not have built a hill into your scene, that my character actually has trouble getting up it. If I hold down the right arrow key, so I'm just going to hold down the right arrow key, he kind of gets halfway up before he loses momentum and then slides back down. And again, you may want your game to function that way, so I can push the right arrow key and then I have to push it again, and then push it again, and push it again to kind of get my character up the hill. And maybe you want your players to have struggle like that by pushing the key over and over and over again to get up this hill. But I do have a workaround for you if you just want your users or players to be able to hold down the key and just consistently move up the hill without slowing down or sliding down. And the way that we do this is we're going to push the back button. We'll go back into our hero, and we're going to open up the move right, and we're going to do the exact same thing for the move left. And what we're going to do is add in a timer here. So again, the coding says that when we push the right key, change the linear velocity in x to 200. But when we hit that hill, that velocity runs out. So I'm going to grab a timer behavior. I'm going to drag and drop that. And again, this is important where you drag and drop it. I'm going to drag it into the move right rule. And I'm going to take this change attribute behavior and drop that into the timer. Then I'm going to switch this to every 0 seconds. So basically, instantaneously when I'm pushing the right key, I want you to keep pushing this or keep executing this change attribute behavior, which is to get our character to move to the right. So let's see what happens. I'll preview this. And I'm going to hold down the right key, and he doesn't slow down. He just slides all the way up the hill there. So he has no trouble, because we essentially have that timer every 0 seconds executing this move right, which is exactly what we want. And if we had a hill to our left, then of course we'd want to set up the same set of programming for our move left. So I'm going to do it one more time. I'll open up move left, and I'm going to drag in a timer here. And this is going to go inside the move left rule. So every 0 seconds, I want you to execute the change my linear velocity to minus 200 so our character is moving left. And then of course let's test that out and make sure that everything's working fine. So we can jump and we can't double jump. And we can move up the hill without any effort. And then we can start exploring our world. So take a moment to make sure that you have all this programming set up exactly the way that you want. Disable your double or triple jump features. And if you want your character to be able to run up this hill effortlessly, then go ahead and set in that 0 timer there, which allows them to kind of run up without kind of losing momentum and slowing down. You will notice, because these invisible barriers that I created are also called the ground for the sidewalls here, that because I'm touching them, I can actually do an interesting thing here. That when my character goes all the way to the right and I push the space bar, I can actually kind of climb this wall. And again, that might be one of those things that you might want. You can have your character do this interesting climb here, and then of course jump over to the right. But if you don't want your character to have the ability to climb the wall, all you have to do is replace this actor here with a different actor that, of course, our main actor can collide with, but rename it to something else other than ground. But I think it's really fun that our actor can climb this wall and then jump onto things. So give it a shot, and make sure you have everything set up exactly as we have it here.